You're listening to the Vint Podcast, where we bring you interviews and stories from around the world of wine and spirits. From winemakers and critics to sommeliers and master distillers, we'll explore the people and businesses who are instrumental in shaping the future of today's food and drinks culture. Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vint Podcast. My name is Brady. Finally, back in studio with Billy Galanko, who has been gallivanting around the Galapagos Islands in Croatia. Or not the Galapagos. Where's the Galapagos? It's probably Australia, not...
I think it's off the coast of South America.
But yeah, Billy, back in town. I was away for paternity leave for a while. We didn't really overlap much. Actually, we didn't overlap at all for the podcast. So it's good to have you back and both of us ready to go again.
Yeah, we overlapped for one interview there. But it's nice to have both of us back. I think our listeners will probably be grateful not to have to listen to just one of us. But yeah, it was a good trip. I think just calling it like Dalmatia was probably a better way. That's where the Croatian islands, that we were in.
Montenegro, right? Yeah.
At some points. But yeah, no, we went to other Balkan countries, went to the Montenegro, and then we flew into Croatia, went down to Montenegro for a wedding and explored there for a few days. And then we drove up Croatia a long ways, taking a bunch of ferries and driving a lot. And yeah, it was really interesting. We ended up in Zagreb all the way in the north. So got a full smattering of the country. But I think for this podcast, the most interesting parts will be like the wine tasting portions. And what was cool is I rarely, not that rarely, but I love to taste new varieties. And now that I've been tasting for so long, it's harder to come by on a regular basis. So it was a cool trip because almost everything was new. And I got to taste a lot of each of those new varieties to get a good sense of what they were. And then I also may or may not have tasted at, I don't know how to put this like gently, but I guess it might have been like a Russian oligarch's winery in Montenegro. So I could tell that story quickly here. First, Montenegro is not part of the EU, so there are no travel bans or anything for people from Russia. So there's a lot of Russian people in like Budva where we were and staying at like our hotel, which is cool, or not cool, but it's interesting. Yeah, no, it was just different than other places. So we went and we had a very Balkan tasting experience. So first we decided to go driving to this lake that we were going to get a nice view, and then we were going to go wine tasting on the way home. And I picked a place that I thought was a little out there off the beaten path, because normally when you're going into wine tasting regions, the main parts are corporate, or there's like a main drag. So you want to get a little into the vineyards. So I picked a place that seemed a little out there and also had like amphora. So both above ground amphora, but also in ground aging, which is not that common there. So first we start driving to go to the lake, and we get to this place and there's a little bit of traffic, and we see police officers like blocking the road, and the road is just closed. We sit there for a little while. May told me to go out and ask what was going on, but I was like, I don't speak Montenegrin. It's not going to be very helpful. And I see a lot of people going up, chatting, and then turning around, going the other way. I was like, I think I already get what I need to know. So we turned around and got gas quarter mile down the road. And I asked the guy what he thought was going on with the road and when it would be open. And he said there was some guy who basically lived over there and had paid for the highway to be made, because Montenegro, it only became its own country in 2006. So they're still developing infrastructure. There really hasn't been a lot developed in a long time, for a really long time. So this guy basically paid for the highway. Some private guy paid for the highway. And apparently he hadn't been paid by the government in 6 to 9 months. So he decided to shut down his highway until he was paid. So the main road that we needed to go on was closed until at least 3 p.m., because this guy was angry. And the police were working with him, and I guess there were negotiations going on. So I was like, oh, don't worry, there's another road we can go on. So we went back and we started going on this road, and it's off the main highway. Then we drive like through like an active quarry, which was strange. And then we get on this road that's no more than 5.5 feet wide. It was a little like 1 Series BMW hatchback. And we end up going down this. And then after we go for 15 minutes, Maze, what happens if a car comes the other way? And I was like, I don't know. We're going like many kilometers on this road, at least. So we were on there for 45 minutes. Cars did come eventually. There's a few times where we had to, this is like also a very mountainous area. So we're on like kind of the side of a mountain. It's really pretty. But when cars came the other way, we had to like somehow maneuver the person closest to the side, had to get closer and the other person try not to fall off the cliff or the slope. So we do this for a while. So after about 45 minutes of this, we pop out into this area. We had gone through a couple small villages, some big World War II monuments, just tucked away in the middle of nowhere, which was strange. And then we get to this like big valley just opens up and we get to this winery and it was just like, it was pretty cool. There was a guy who greeted us. We were the only people there in this giant tasting room. He had just like the standard, like kind of Balkans outfit on, like just sweatpants. It was just like sweatpants and a sweatshirt and just like half open. And in Croatia also is very common.
Like matching crew neck sweatshirt and sweatpants. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You guys can picture it. Exactly. And he was very nice and greeted us. But then I walked in, there was like some weird art around. They look like Cossacks. I don't know if you've ever seen these. It's like traditional people that lived on the steppes in Ukraine and up in Russia. It's a thing. There were special types of soldiers and people. So I thought that was interesting. But then the guy gave us a tour and it was really neat. We actually started with a Chardonnay that was really good. And they gave us a tour and there's tons of French oak around, these brand new amphora, brand new Coravin and all this stuff. It was really expensive, like brand new tanks. Like it looked like a really nice winery. And I was just like, how, like we're in the middle, we just drove 45 minutes on this road. I know there was a bigger road, but
I own the bigger road.
Yeah. Basically, he didn't really say that, but so what turns out is, so I was wondering, I was like, this is really nice. And there's a lot of expensive stuff here. We're a small village that like doesn't have really much going on. And then I asked him about it a little bit. And it turns out the owner, is a couple that owns it. And the lady is Russian and her husband is Montenegrin from the area. And turns out her dad is the one who was paid for the whole winery. And he's also building a hotel there and all this other stuff. So he's potentially a Russian oligarch who just loves Georgian wine and was trying to recreate Georgian wine, including skin contact wines in Montenegro. So we had a bunch of wines. The main reds come from a grape called Vernac, VRNAC. So we had a bunch of expressions of those. It was pretty cool. They had some cool skin contact wines too. One was like half Chardonnay and another variety I couldn't pronounce. But we tasted a bunch of wines and I won't belabor the point too much. I think it was really good. I brought a bottle for my buddy who was getting married, but it was the first winery I've ever been to where they had older wines. They had a 2013 and we tasted like 2016s and 18s, but the 2013 he pulled out and this wine is no longer good. And we were like, all right. And he's like, yes. How do you say, you keep pulling out Google Translate. He's like, it used to be good, but it's gone like downhill. Like, he just kept doing like the downhill hand signal. And we're like, okay. And he's now you taste. And we're like, what? So the first place. Yeah. It's the first place I've ever been where they're like, this wine is not good anymore. Here, have it. But I think the point was to compare it to like the 2016 that was like in its prime drinking window. And he's like, see this, now this is good. And then maybe it's so he'd buy the younger ones. What did you think about
the one that the 2013 or the,
yeah, it was just over the hill. I guess like the term like rancio, the oxidative notes that you get with like aged wine. So like all the fruit had dropped out. There's still good acid, but to begin with, these wines aren't like super high tannin. So I think
just had that might have no like structure to it anymore.
Yeah, it was basically just like really sour, oxidized wine at that point. So it had the acid to age, but I guess the rest of the fruit and stuff wasn't there. And you could see the 16 moving in that direction. What was left in the 16 was still some fruit, but yeah, we did have some aged, high quality, like ageable versions that spent time in barrel and stuff of this grape. So I know it can age well, but just the way that they were making it didn't. So that was interesting. So that was quite the experience. That was our Montenegro time. We had a bunch of that Vernac grape while we were there. And then in Croatia, we went up and had a few varieties. I would say the varieties that most stuck out to me that I would tell everybody to look for would be like Plavac Mali. It's spelled Plavacmali. It's a red grape. It was grown on this, I can't really say, it's like Pajilsac Peninsula. This peninsula that we would drive down. It's like super mountainous area, but it's grown on a lot of areas in Croatia, but it makes really nice long-lived red wines. It can be really ripe. They were all head-trained vines, just like if you picture like old vines in Zinfandel. Really cool, just up on these like steep slopes. There's a wine called Dingac, which is made from Plavac Mali, which is basically just like saying Bordeaux. It's made mostly Cabernet and Merlot. So we had a lot of like Dingac that was 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 years old. And it was like so good. it aged really, really well. So highly recommend seeking out those, even younger versions too. And their other white grape was called Posip, Posip, but it had a little hot check over the S. This wine, they could make basically everything from like a skin contact, almost more like a Chardonnay, like a minerally Chardonnay style, to like also sometimes a zestier, fruitier, almost a Sauvignon Blanc nose style as well. So that was cool, really depending on where it's grown. It was from the island of Korčula originally. So there it was more minerally, but other places where it was riper, it got a little bit more tropical fruity. And then we had a wine called Grk. The grape was GRK. Only grown on this one little island. Really hard to find. It's like the pride of Croatia white wines. It's not really exported, so that's why I brought it up last. But we purposely went to this island. We drove around on a bike to go look at the vines. So I got to experience this, but it was the one that everybody says you should check out.
Yeah, it's funny. It says online, it says, particularly found in the village of Lombarda. It's one village where they have it.
Yeah, it was also, yes, where we biked through. It was also grown, they had some further in the island now, but yeah, mainly like that village. And it's a really full-bodied wine. It's more of, you could tell why it got famous back in the day, like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and like ripe, like bigger wine styles, like white wines were like valued for how sweet and like kind of fruity, and not necessarily fruity, but kind of the more ripe you could get, a higher alcohol you could get a white wine was, yeah, exactly. Was more valued back in the day. So it reminded me of Rhone whites, like a Marsanne Roussanne blend that was like very full bodied. It wasn't really aromatic. It was more like honey and nuts and some other things, but it was still really good. Great acid. It balanced it out. Full body wine. Yeah. So everybody should seek out those three if they can find them, those three grapes.
Yeah, if you can find, go to Lombarda, go through the mountains, go across, and there you'll find it.
Yeah. And then we drove past the village where Vendel may or may not have come from. Yeah. One of the names. So it's Croatian grape. They call it Tribodrag, and they also call it Kroljenak Kristolanski, I believe is how they say it. And it was from this island or this town. I think it was called Kristal, something like that. It's close to that. But we drove by where it was from. So that was pretty exciting as well. But I will say from the northeast, this is the Dalmatian coast. They grow like the riper, bigger wines. But in the northeast, in Slavonia, like northeast of Zagreb, closer to Hungary, they grow like Riesling. Welsh Riesling is the most widely planted grape there. It's called Grasvina there. They make some really nice crisp styles of white wine. We had a couple sparklings from up there as well. I would say definitely Croatia's as like a historical wine growing country. Everybody should check it out. I think it's only just now coming back into its prime after the wars in the 90s and basically coming out of socialism and kind of becoming their own country again.
Yeah, we have more importers starting to bring that stuff in, especially if you go to your local wine shop. The skin contact things, the white wines, definitely seeing more of that, I feel like.
Yeah. We went to a natural wine.
Right?
Yeah. They're still growing. And the wines that you will be seeing are more traditional style wines there too. We went to a natural wine bar in Zagreb, and even there it was hard. That's where I had my first skin contact Plavec but not Plavec, Posip. And then we had like not hundreds, but tens of other Posips around. So yeah, everybody keep a lookout for it. I think our friends at Vinalia will be bringing some in too. They just did a sourcing trip a few months back.
That's what I had in mind. Yeah. Figure that they would eventually do something like that. I think they already do have some Croatian wine on their platform, Vinalia.
They might have it listed now. They just went on a trip a month and a half ago. We actually used some of their recommendations while we were there. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah.
Good. Glad it was. How did it compare? You say it was really pretty there, but in terms of just call it wine regions you've visited, what were the views and the aesthetic components like?
Yeah, something I was really surprised about it as a whole, even in Montenegro too, is like they're in the south part of Croatia. There are these mountains that just like jut up from the coast, like basically like straight up. So there's a little bit of coastline and then mountains all in the middle. So I think overall it was really pretty. Even the islands like Korčula, and we went to Far as well, were really pretty. And we drove down the Pelšac Peninsula like 4 or 5 times, mainly because we parked there. And then one day we went to go visit, so we had to keep going up and back. So it's really pretty. I will say a lot of it's like really old school viticulture. It's like a lot of head trained like bush vines. So they're basically just like head trained vines with like their arms, the vines falling down. Nothing's really cordon trained. So it looked more like central Spain or like some of those places where it gets really hot and you just need to have the vines spread out. So it was cool in that sense. And some were on the edge, just facing the ocean. It's just like really steep vineyards. And you're like, I can't believe people are walking in these super steep vineyards, actually harvesting these bush vines. Because each one
any basket training?
No, it wasn't that. It was mainly just like
the coastline there. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that windy. It was basically just, and it was on steeper slopes. I picture almost like some of them were flat, but some of them were like Mosul steep slopes, which, I mean, those are hard enough to harvest when they're in a straight line, but like just picturing somebody had to go up to each bush vine and grab the grapes and just knowing what these wines were selling for, I was like, there's no wonder if they could import it to the US, they could make so much more money just because they could tell the story about hand-picked vines. So it was really interesting, but that was cool. And then the other thing is like every house for shade has like a grapevine growing over there, either their garage or their porch. Huh. So I got a kick out of looking at grapevines everywhere. So that was cool.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of bathtub wine around that. Some of it's probably pretty good.
Yeah, their families have been making it for hundreds of years. I'm sure some of them know what they're doing.
Yep. Very cool. Been getting back into the bottle a little bit since paternity leave. Actually, more whiskey. Just got into wine though again because now my wife is moving out of the window where she can have small amounts of alcohol safely. Even though she's feeding and stuff, you have to be careful with that. But drinking more wine. Picked up the other day. Picked up some Found North whiskey. Actually, they just did a recent release of they have a special series, 2 older whiskeys called their First Flight, or I guess they're calling it First Flight, but they have 2 bottles. One's called Peregrine, one's called Helldiver, that they released in limited quantities recently. And I picked up the most recent one, just like on a whim at a store, had 1 bottle near me. So that was really cool.
Oh, wow.
I'm so excited to get into that. Yeah, I think I might dive deeper and start collecting each of those series. So, yeah, they're really great whiskeys. So just plugging that again.
Nice.
Outside of that, my head has been in wine accessories.
Yeah, so we get to our
when to talk about
bearing the lead. Yeah,
Billy and I both came up with lists of sort of wine gadgets, wine accessories, things we use in our wine drinking practice, so that we can't live without. That's our buzz. What's it called? BuzzFeed. Yeah, the BuzzFeed article header.
Oh, like the listicle.
5 accessories we can't live without.
So we basically we've talked about some of our favorite wines. We've talked about some recommendations on sparkling wines, holiday wines, pairing. We haven't really talked about the tools that we use on a regular basis. And I call them tools, but it could be anything, things that I'm pretty particular about when it comes to my wine, or just things that we need in general. Brady, do you want to kick it off with your first one, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, the one I put at the top of my list is a funny one. And I don't think you use this. Maybe you do, but I put saran wrap at the top of my list. The reason I put it at the top is because anytime I get a new bottle, I find the very first thing I do is I bring it into my dining room where I have my wine corner set up, everything. And I get out my saran wrap and I wrap the label and then I put it into my cellar. Yeah, I do that to protect the label. It's a little bit humid inside the wine, in the wine fridge. And also when I bring it out to serve it, if I have to chill it or something like that, I like to have the label wrapped so it doesn't deteriorate if it's in water. And just generally it makes me feel like I'm adding a layer of protection. So sometimes I'm more or less careful with how I do it. And so sometimes it doesn't really affect viewing the label at all. And other times it's, wait, what does the back of that say? Because I have all this saran wrap over it. But when I first started doing it, I would have friends come over and be like, oh, grab a wine out of the wine cabinet or whatever. And they would always grab the saran wrapped ones because they knew that those were ones that were like more expensive or more special. And so I started saran wrapping everything so they can't like just drink my expensive stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I think the only bottle, I have my little fridge here. The only bottle that I have wrapped is our DRC bottle that's in there. So
nice. Yeah. I saran wrap some of my whiskeys because some whiskeys are really hard to pour without it running down the side of the bottle. So I saran wrap a few of those so that nothing gets on the label if it drips accidentally. Anyways.
Nice. That makes sense. Okay. Let's see. Where do I want to start? I know we overlap on one of these, so I'm going to not start with that one. I'm going to start with a good corkscrew because that is one I have in hand right now. And it's more of a wine key. I have this one we got from our company before. But to me, it's important. I don't really like the things with the man with the flappy arms one where you can screw it down and then pull it up. I don't think.
Yeah. I don't know how to. Anytime someone has one of those, I say, hey, can someone else do this? Because I always mess it up. I can't even use it.
Yeah, that's a good way. Like you end up sometimes you can break corks that way. Like it's difficult for me to use. Also, it doesn't have a foil cutter, so like I end up trying to use the tip of it to cut the foil, and I end up like cutting myself. I will say the one thing I've tried before is like an electric bottle opener, where you put it down in the corkscrew thing, and you press a button, then it goes down, and then it pulls it up. That's worked pretty well for me in the past. I had one of those before I really got into wine. But if you're going to get a corkscrew, I know some people don't like them, the wine keys, but I think the key is just getting a good one. So the one I always used to do in my sommelier studies, I'm going to give a couple, I guess I'll give a plug here. There's a brand on Amazon, and back in the day, it used to be like $12. I just pulled it up today for the first time, and it's $17 now, but it's called Haiku, Hi, and then Coup. Waiter corkscrews. And this was one that I had used and I had a lot of sommelier buddies use. And you can get it with a wooden handle. It looks really nice. It's like really high quality, but it was like really cheap. I have another sommelier buddy who got like a $200 corkscrew or a wine key. Another one we got is from Vint, from our company. And it was a company called Coutale, 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 Sommelier Prestige. This one also works really well. I tend
those
to.
are the ones I use, the Prestige ones. They're like $40 on Amazon.
It's a little more expensive, but it's nice weight.
It's for sure.
Definitely a sturdy thing.
I was going to mention the sort of the things to look for when you buy one too, because obviously I have that. Actually, I had that also on my list, but I can say something else. Anyways, the things to look for, you want to have a metal actual corkscrew, so not the plastic like screw part of it.
The worm.
Yeah, the worm, exactly. You want to have a lever or like a step, I guess sometimes they call it, where you can open the bottle and then press the lever in and step it up one more so that you aren't bending the cork. And then I think that on the blade, you want the blade to be serrated, not flat. It's best to have a serrated blade.
I never thought about the serrated blade. I will say, the step is really nice. I don't think it's like for me a necessity, but I do really enjoy that. And then, I think the worm is the most important part. Some have like black ones that are like carbon, and those work really well. This one has a line through the middle that helps it go in and out really easily. But I also think like having the sturdy base part is really important, because as you're trying to get leverage, you don't want something that's like really short or really flimsy, because that's how it'll slip and you'll end up injuring yourself. So look for weight. Isn't just for coolness, it's actually for balance and support.
For sure. Yeah. It's me. I'll say my wine fridge or wine cooler. I'm not sure it's referred to. I'll say wine fridge because I have both a tall one with 12 pull-out racks, and then I have a smaller one as well that I had first started with. I just bought my first one on Facebook Marketplace, and my second one it was nicer and larger. And so I found that I filled them up really quickly, but it's nice to know that your wines are kept in good temperature and humidity. Also, for some wines that I'm storing, I know that they're at a temperature where I can just pull it out and serve it right away. And I know exactly, what the temperature is. So my white wines, it's nice to just be able to pull it out and serve it. In the reds, pull it out, let it sit for 10 minutes, and it's good to go. So I think also having like something where you have a method to your storage. You have shelves. You can say, okay, I'm keeping my whites on the top 6 and my reds on the bottom 6. That's just helpful for me. So like I have a dessert wine shelf and a sparkling shelf, and that's for me has become a necessity after I got over 2 cases at home. I think having a fridge got like really important, and so now that I'm up to 20 cases or whatever, it's definitely important. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I used to have 3 small fridges because I had a little apartment in Los Angeles, and I just bought a fridge every time I needed more room. But then when I moved in with my fiance years ago, we downsized just to 1. It was ridiculous to have 3 because we lived in such a small place, and we had to combine all our stuff. I don't know if people can hear now. Actually, mine's making noise. I was wondering why I have in our digital studio, I can see when I'm talking, and I was like, I'm not talking, and it's coming up. But I think, it's important if you want to have something that you want your wines to properly age over time. If you're intending to keep something for more than like a year, I would say definitely put it in a fridge. We certainly have plenty that's outside of a fridge, and if you keep it in a generally cool place that's out of sunlight, you should be okay. But if you're really intending on keeping something, or to your point, wanting to be able to serve it relatively quickly. I think a fridge is kind of a must for any serious wine person.
Yeah, and for me, it was like volume too, because I just had stuff everywhere. And it was like just by virtue of having just say 24 bottles on hand, I know I'm not going to drink it like right away, right? And yeah, both how long are you going to keep this and just how much do you have, because both of those are the same thing in a certain sense. But start with something on Facebook Marketplace. Start with something small that you can pick up for like $100-$150, and then as you grow your collection, for me it was nice to go and get something of real quality that I know I can have for 20 years and it's not going to crap out on me. So yeah, go ahead.
All right. I'm tempted to do one that we both have.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what? I'm going to wait and do that one next, because then we can expand either of the two that we both have left. I'm going to go with a Durand, just playing off my last thing. So for those of you who want to take your corkscrew game to the next level, or you're drinking a lot of older wines, I highly recommend getting a Durand. It's basically an Osso, or what they call it, the butler's friend, which is like a two-pronged tool that's made to pull out corks that are falling apart. So it's like that's basically something you just push in to the sides of the cork, and it like grabs on to the sides, and you pull it up slowly, and it uses I don't know exactly how that works, but it pulls up the cork and kind of keeping it intact and supporting it on either side as you pull it out. But sometimes those are hard to get in, and they're hard to really gain like traction pulling out the cork. So sometimes you cause a little bit more damage in that process. So a Durand is basically a corkscrew plus the Osso, or plus the butler's friend. So you basically have a corkscrew that you're screwing down, and at the same time it has, it has the Osso arms. So you put the Osso arms in, so it's holding the cork together from the sides, and then you screw on the corkscrew piece to the top, and it basically has a worm that goes down in. So you basically have the best of both worlds. You have the corkscrew pulling the cork up from the middle, and you have the arms pulling it from the side, and they're connected by screws, like a screw. I don't know what is that called?
Yeah, it's
you
like
basically connect them, screw them together, and then you can pull them out in one piece. And it's the best way to get any cork that you think has any issues, because the potential to fall apart. And it's perfect for old wines, or wines that are just aged in like really humid conditions where the cork might be degenerating.
Yeah, if you have a collection or wines that you've kept in your kitchen for 3 years, you need maybe it's been up on its base for 3 years and the cork might be dried out. It's a good thing to use. Yeah, I have one also. I actually haven't used it. I got it as a gift because they're pretty expensive. And so it was one of those things. I was like, I don't use it. I know I wasn't going to use it a ton, so I asked for it as a Christmas gift, and someone got it for me, which was nice. And I need to just use it on any bottle, because you don't have to use it on like really old wines. I always just feel confident that I can get it out without using it, and so I don't. But it's a great tool to have, and definitely 100% takes your corkscrew game up a notch for sure.
Yeah. It's a little bit more work, but it's worth it for you. Even if you don't need it for a special bottle, it's still fun.
It's fun. Yeah.
Adds a little pizzazz.
And also like one out of every 30 bottles I open with a normal corkscrew, I screw up the cork anyways. So it can be something that, yeah. My third is going to be a bottle bag, or like wine luggage. When I say bottle bag, I just mean some bag that is proper for taking your wine from your house to wherever you're going, whether that's a friend's house or out for a picnic or like to some event or even just like weekend travel. I have a bag that's like an insulated sort of over the shoulder bottle bag that can hold 3 bottles in it. And so I really like that for just taking to dinner parties or places I go, knowing that the wine is padded and has a place to store and carry them. And also then some wine luggage, which is just hard-sided luggage bag that has inserts, foam inserts for bottles to be placed in and then strapped in if you're doing airplane travel, I guess any kind of travel, but if you're traveling longer distances and need to carry more items, carry more luggage, having those inserts in your luggage is really nice. So I've enjoyed both my wine luggage and my bottle bags that I just use on like a kind of daily basis.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't found the need. We don't like checking bags, so we don't do the luggage piece. I just wrap everything up. I will say I did get a hard-sided suitcase just because I knew I would be putting wines in there eventually, even if it's just with my clothes. Mm-hmm. And we have a ton of those like cloth versions of that bag that you're talking about. that we've gotten from wineries. Like every time you buy 3 or 4 or 6 bottles. So that's what we carry around with.
Nice.
One thing I did want to clear up in terms of luggage and flying with wine. I don't know if we chatted about this after, but it was at our retreat here in Oregon. I was talking to, what's the winemaker's name from Make the White Wines, the Chardonnay?
Or Jackson, Granville, is that what you mean?
No, the other guy, more famous, bought by Constellation. Thomas. I was talking to Thomas. Yeah.
I kept thinking of Massicon when you said Constellation. Yeah, Thomas.
A lingua franca, yeah. So I was talking to him about bottles exploding, like champagne bottles, because I've been telling everybody, like I heard that they would explode. And once we were coming back actually from Oregon and a bottle exploded in my fiance's bag. It was the only one she wanted. And it turns out and you had mentioned before that you'd flown with champagne. And he clarified to me that it all comes down to the quality of the glass that the producer's using. So I told him I was flying home from Oregon once with a sparkling, and he was actually able, without skipping a beat, he just goes, "Was it this winery?" And I was like, "And like this wine?" And I was like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He's like, "They use really crappy glass there." So I'm not surprised. I was like, what? Yeah. Like I've been basing my life for the past 6 years off that event. So
traveling, that you can travel with, I feel like people get nervous. Oh, is it going to break? Like probably not. You even mentioned wrapping your bottles in clothing, like in your suitcase. I do that still with my luggage, like with the luggage inserts too, because I run out of room. And so I'm always doing that. And I've never had a bottle break. I've carried probably 3 or 4 cases of wine, like through the air to this point. Nothing has ever broken. So yeah.
I was mainly worried about the pressure difference, but it turns out as long as your sparkling wine has a cage on it, the real point of weakness would be the cork coming out, not the sides. And as long as you leave the cage on, even if you want, you can wrap clothes around it to help push the cork down. But turns out I had nothing really to worry about at all. So that's an anecdote there.
They also, one more. They also make the bubble bottle holders that it's just a single bottle shape, and you put a bottle in it, and it's just bubble wrap around the outside of it, or like air pocket. It's like an air pocket holder, which you can buy. They're expensive actually, but they're really nice for transporting wine. So.
Yeah, I've used those. They take up so much space in your bag. If you don't have it exclusive. But cool. So my next one will be, and I know you have this iteration of this on there, and this is actually probably my biggest must for anything, is quality wine glasses to drink out of. And my definition of quality, I prefer a decently long stem, but that's not a necessity. It is a thin lip on the glass. None of these big bubble, where they wrap over around the rim. Yeah. They're really thick. And then I prefer a bowl that's tall enough for you to actually be able to swirl and aerate and get the wine around. There's a few places in LA that try to have these cool, thick, they're old school, goblets almost. And they're isn't this trying to basically have something that looks cool on a glass or on a table? It's adding ambiance, maybe making you feel like you're in the 20s. It's impossible to swirl. Sometimes they have the coupes. Sometimes they just have really small, thick, and it's not enjoyable. And then you can make your comment about stemless glasses, but I think it has to have a stem and thin lip, and that's basically my bigger requirements. And then preferably swirlable.
Yeah, I agree on the thin lip thing, or not having. I guess it's called not having a rolled glass edge at the top.
Yeah.
Usually, if you're buying a glass that's over $6 or $8 a glass, it shouldn't have a rolled lip. So I know even the glasses that they sell at Crate and Barrel or any semi-elevated home goods store should have glasses like this. Of course, there are some brands out there. If you just search wine glasses, the big names are all great. I think the only other thing I'd add to what you said on the wine glasses is if you drink particular kinds of wine, whether that is either maybe dessert wines, sparkling wine, or a lot of Pinot Noir or lighter bodied aromatic wines, it is nice to have a variety specific glass. Having Pinot Noir glasses are really nice. I think that drinking Pinot Noir out of a Pinot Noir glass is just 10 times better than drinking out of a normal Merlot style glass. That's just a preference thing. They're big and gaudy and hard to store and all of that. I understand that, but it's nice to have a couple variety specific glasses if that's your thing.
Yeah. I I do agree. I mean, when you
I do drink sparkling. I have just like a white wine glass, which I think is the best way. But I was going to say, if you have dinner parties and you want to serve in more of like a fluted glass, that's nice to have on hand too.
Yeah. Our go-tos here are just like the standard, I guess they look like a white wine glass. We drink almost everything out of those. Like we do have some of those all-purpose, like a Gabriel glass as well, that we don't really bust out anymore. But we used to have the smaller that we use for almost everyday drinking, and then like the bigger, tall ones for reds.
Yeah.
We've since broken a couple of those, so now we don't use them as much. But I will agree, like for me, it's just a necessity to have those bare minimum requirements that I've been saying. But I do agree. I think having a big enough bowl for a red that you actually need to aerate, like if something's not going to be decanted well enough, when you're really, or it's a freshly opened bottle that might be a little reductive, it's important to have enough room to swirl. And so for a red, I think it's really helpful to have a really big bowl of sorts. I will say that drinking out of a big old Pinot Noir glass is actually really fun. It's not like a necessity for me, but it is it is fun because it feels like a special experience every time you do that with an actual really high quality Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I had a friend who got really good pricing on a particular brand of glassware. And so I got like less than wholesale cost a bunch of 12 glass cases. So I have 12 Pinot Noir glasses, 12 cab glasses, like all these. And I only use 4 of them. But if I ever have a huge party, it's nice that people can have multiple glasses at their seat. Let's see, which way do I want to go? Okay, I'll do this one. A wine bottle chiller or some kind of stainless steel bucket that you can put your wine in on the table with water and ice and chill it, whether that's your white wines or your sparkling wines, I think is a necessity just for like service and keeping things clean and looking nice and accessible at the table. But also just, it's nice to have stainless steel buckets around when you're serving wine, whether you're spitting into them or using them to chill. I think I'm going to go with a bucket or a wine chilling bucket, or I guess you might say a nice bucket, something to put your white wines or your sparkling wines in with water and ice at the table when you're serving it for guests, or even just sitting outside to keep your bottle chilled. It's nice to have a dedicated bucket that's designed for that purpose versus I've stuck my bottles in like mixing bowls before, things like that. So it's nice to have a stainless steel pail that's tall enough and designed to keep your bottle cool.
Yep, I 100% agree. I was just thinking about that, especially as summer's coming around. We have people over. The worst thing is coming back in or bringing a white wine out and it getting warm, or having to go in and out. So I 100% agree. Having some sort of bucket or pail is crucial.
I do have 2 spit buckets too, which I found actually like super helpful. I got them because I was doing a few like more formal wine gatherings at my house, but I've actually just like really liked them generally, especially if you have friends over often and get out a few different bottles, which our next accessory helps us do that, to have somewhere where folks can spit discreetly if you're a more serious wine drinker and you do it with friends. It has been nice. I didn't think I would use them a lot, but I actually use them a good bit. So
nice. Yeah, I just spit in the cups. None of my friends I can ever convince to spit. Nobody quite understands it yet. So it's just a me thing. Cool. So before we get on to your last thing, it'll also be my last thing. I actually didn't have it on here originally, but I'm going to say it now, is a decanter or something of enough volume to help your wine breathe properly. This is something that I didn't really use a lot. I still don't use it as much as I probably should. My fiance had broken my decanter a while back, so we've been using our Chemex as our decanter because we don't use it all the time. Yeah.
It pours great. I love the way the Chemex pours out of it. You can hold it so far away.
Agreed. Yeah. It's almost like a Basque wine or like a cider. But I will say, if you swirl too aggressively, I did recently, and it went everywhere. It can only hold so much, and then it supports it coming out. But recently, I don't know if it's just because I've started looking for it more, but a wine doesn't necessarily just need to be decanted because of tannins or something like that. So you shouldn't only be decanting younger red wines, or even red wines with 5, 10, 15 years of age. There's a bunch of wines that maybe have some reductive notes, some of that like sulfur compounds, and a little bit of stuff that if you just keep pouring from the glass, you're going to have to just swirl, or pouring from the bottle, you're going to have to swirl your glass each time or just not enjoy it as much. So it's really helpful to have something that's big, allow that to blow off. You can double decant, put it back in the bottle if you want after that. But there's just a few things that really let the wine open and express itself. I think a lot of time people are judging a wine by what it tastes like when it's just right out of the bottle, when they drink it within 20 minutes of it coming out. And it's really probably not showing exactly what the wine should taste like. And I'm sure some people are like, what was the hubbub about this wine? It's like you didn't actually let it get to what it's supposed to taste like and be special. So,
Sure. Yeah. And maybe speaking of like a reason why you might decant some of the other wine styles that especially you particularly drink could be like sediment and helping to get some of that out and like to filter the wine a little bit. Yeah.
Yep.
Can be helpful as well. So that's another reason why we might decant. I was definitely like decant happy when I first started drinking wine. Like I poured everything in the decanter. And so now I feel like I don't pour it. Like I haven't used my decanter in a really long time. So I need this pendulum swing back to the middle.
Yeah, I've just been coming across a lot of really reductive wines where I wish I had a decanter. I don't know if that's because we drink a lot of natural wines, but it's even some of the traditional ones too, that I just end up swirling my glass for 15 minutes before I can drink it. So
another reason why I don't use my decanter a lot is because of the next item that we both jointly had on our list. And we haven't been saying brand names of things, but this one you have to say a brand name because they're the only one, I think, doing this, or at least doing this with scale and quality on the consumer market. And that is Coravin, allowing you to drink a wine from the bottle, pour it by the glass without opening the cork. So it replaces the wine that you take out with argon gas. So it protects the wine from coming in contact with oxygen and allows you to insert the Coravin needle and pour it into your glass and drink a glass at a time out of a bottle without having to waste the whole thing or open the whole thing. One of the reasons why I don't decant a lot is because I'm not opening the whole bottle that much these days.
yeah, so that's also a crossroads I run into with Coravin. Is it does work so well that if you are drinking so you mainly are Coravining your more expensive wines. So then those are also ones that benefit from decanting. So what I've been doing recently is I'll Coravin out 2 glasses at once, give them both a swirl, then I'll just have one right away and keep swirling it and try to let it open. But then by the time I'm done, at least the second one will have had some time to open up a little bit more. And it's a little bit more expressive. But yep, Coravin was my 5th one as well. It saved me numerous dollars. I think we'll get into this more in time here, but I've used it a lot while I'm studying. I highly recommend anybody get one because it really helps bottles go further and a lot less go to waste.
Yeah, after you have proper wine glasses and a waiter's cork or a corkscrew, it really is the next most necessary accessory, I believe, for someone who's seriously drinking wine, even before a fridge or anything else like that, even before saran wrap. So it should have been top of the list.
Yeah, when I was in Croatia, I guess Coravins are just starting to get there. So then like higher end restaurants were offering Coravin wines, but they had this whole laminated cutout calling Coravin like the most innovative, like the biggest innovation in wine, and had this whole big like propaganda display and explaining like what its benefits were. And it was so funny to see. It's like this, you would think it was just invented yesterday in Croatia. It was just such a hype piece, but it was pretty funny.
That's funny. Yeah, there are like other ways to preserve and save wine. There's like a company called Private Reserve. They make a little canister of gas that you can drink your wine, take your cork that your like temporary cork that you're about to put in and stick the nozzle and spray the gas in and then put your cork in. That can also provide a temporary barrier, but there just isn't, another accessory that accomplishes the task of preserving wine in between glasses like Coravin. Foolproof for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't say foolproof. I would say two things. One, always check here's some tips for using your Coravin. One, always check that the cork is cork and not glass. I have broken a Coravin needle trying to stab through. I was wondering why it was such a stubborn cork, and it turns out it was just glass, and my Coravin needle bent 90 degrees. I will also say, most of the time the cork will close up again, but I would always keep your Coravin wines upright afterward. They do reseal, but there is the off chance that some wine could dribble out of the hole. I've heard of that happening online. Never happened to me, but possible. And
I'll say, so to that, it has happened to me. And I think that and I'd be curious to hear what the Coravin people would say, but one of the things to do to mitigate against that is just to not put your wine on its side right away. Leave it upright for a little bit like a day or two after you have used it. And then if you want to put it on its side, to go ahead and do that. But I did, and it leaked all the way down through my cellar and got on a bunch of bottles. Luckily, everything was saran wrap.
We'll have to ask him about that, because I will say also the way it works is the gas is heavier than air. So you want it to be upright. So the air will still go to the top and you have that pillow of the gas in between the wine. And then the last piece, no matter what you're doing after you open wine, always put it in the fridge. It slows down oxidation. The darkness in the fridge also slows down oxidation. If you leave it on your counter, it's going to oxidize faster. There's going to be light. It's going to make it go bad faster. So regardless if it shouldn't be served cold, put it in the fridge, take it out in a period of time before you want to drink it. But that's going to help preserve any wine that you have opened already.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes that can be like a taboo thing. Oh, you put your wine in the fridge. It's so cold in there. The change in temperature is so bad. But it really is the best way to keep your wine drinkable throughout the week. Especially if you've Coravined it. There is a difference between, I think, opening a bottle and putting one of those cheap like Walmart rubber cork things in the glass and then putting it in the fridge.
Pumping out the air.
Yeah, exactly. Because your wine's probably going to taste like lettuce or carrots or just smell like fridge after a while. But in general, put it in the fridge. Don't be afraid to cool it down.
No, but put all of your open wines in the fridge. It won't smell like lettuce. We have wines in there that sit there forever, even if they just have their cork in.
Nice. Is that it? We have everything. Those are the 9 accessories that you have to have.
All right. That is our episode for this week. We'll be back with another interview. Actually, with one of the last time I gave a preview for an interview, they ended up canceling last minute. We had to reschedule. But with one of the people that I've really wanted to interview, Jose Villamoj. He is a wine geneticist. He's one of the people who has pioneered wine DNA. He's a co-author of Wine Grapes, which is with Jancis Robinson and Julia Harding, who we also had on the podcast. So I've been trying to get him on the podcast for years. I'm really excited. So stay tuned and we'll be back with his interview next week. Cheers.